Good evening and welcome to Your Money and Business. I'm Jeff Salkin. On tonight's program, how one gift shop owner is turning a profit with one-stop shopping, plus the impact of a friend's successful job search on your ability to find a job. That's coming up. But first, this week, it's one of the easiest places for cash-starved companies to cut back. But is cutting the marketing budget the right move? Joining us in the studio, David Warschawski, CEO of Warschawski, a marketing communications firm. Thanks for being here.
It's my pleasure, Jeff. Thank you for having us.
Do you find that the clients are cutting back these days?
I think a lot of them have an inclination that that's what they'd like to do, but it's really the wrong thing for them to be doing. Historically, when we look at the data during a recessionary period, a lot of studies have been done, and during the last recessionary periods, companies that cut their advertising and marketing budget during the recession, if you looked at them 2 years after the recession ended, they had grown their sales by 50%. Compare that with companies that had continued to invest in their marketing and advertising budget during the recessionary period. After that 2-year period after the recession ended, they'd grown their sales by 200%. So yes, in the short term, a lot of companies think maybe this is the wise place for us to look to cut budget, but if you're long-term invested in your business, it's not the right thing to be doing.
So in terms of promoting a message and developing a brand, this is an advantageous time because there's less clutter out there?
I think you just hit the nail on the head. It's one of the best times. There are a lot of similarities between the financial market and financial investing or financial consulting and what we do. And Warren Buffett's very famous for saying, be careful when others are greedy and be greedy when others are being careful. Well, this is a wonderful time. Now's a time to be very proactive, to take in market share. You can buy more for less, you can have a bigger impact for less, and you can reach your core target audience far more easier because, just as you said, there are less people who are doing what they should be doing from a marketing and PR communication standpoint.
And that's a compelling pitch, but if you're talking to somebody whose company is on the ropes, sales are down, and they have to choose between layoffs or selling part of a company or cutting the ad budget, frequently they're just going to cut the ad budget.
And that's true, and sometimes it's just not possible for a company, and there's no argument to be made there. If we're in survival mode and we're cutting everything, then yes, we have to look at all the disciplines, and marketing communications needs to be one of the ones you look at. But I would caution people to do that carefully. It's like anything else in your business that you're investing in over the long term. You wouldn't look at your portfolio and say, some of my stocks are all of my stocks are doing really poorly. Let me just ad hoc cut all of my portfolio. Now's the right time to stay invested. Now's the right time to look at what are we doing so that in 2 years we come out of this stronger and better. So if you are able to, it is the right thing to do. But obviously, if you're in a very difficult position, and some companies are, then you do have to make some difficult choices.
Is the tone of a marketing message different because we're in a serious recession?
Yes, there are some cases where it's going to be different, and I think you have to be aware and understand who your core target audience is that you're talking to. So some clients or some customers, it's the right time to nuance or change the tone a little bit, to talk about value, to talk about what's the return on investment, the bang for your buck. We're still the same brand you love, we still create that same emotional connection, but maybe we do it at a more reasonable price point, taking into consideration what's going on. But then there's some brands where it's not right for them to change the tone of their messages, especially very exclusive or high-end types of brands. They want to maintain that high level, that high price point, that sense of prestige that comes with them.
What are the clients looking for? If you've had the discussion about how much money we have in the budget, have their goals changed at all?
I think a lot of them are being very cautious or being careful. On a macro level, there are 3 things that we're seeing. The first is, I think this goes across a lot of industries right now, there's price pressure, there's downward price pressure. People want to use the dollars they have and leverage them for all that they're worth. So they're trying to get more for less. The second thing that we're seeing is that companies are making difficult decisions, and sometimes that's difficult for companies to do. And a lot of times companies would default into making no decision because it's safer or easier in their mind not to make the difficult choice. And that's sometimes difficult for other companies like ours to interact with because this requires difficult decision making and being proactive. The third thing that we're seeing is that there's a real increase in wanting to understand what is the ROI, what's the return on investment scenario for every marketing communications action that you're taking. And we think that's a very smart thing for companies to do, and we want to be good partners in helping them assess where do you get the best return on investment?
That stuff is more easily measured, of course, with new media,
Yes.
where if you're paying for clicks, you know how many clicks are turning into visits and turning into sales. Talk to me about new media a little bit, and whether that's continuing to pick up market share at the expense of old media during the recession.
Yes, I definitely think there is a movement away from what sort of has been traditional advertising into more integrated programs. And in that vein, let me begin with integrated communications is really where you're seeing the move. It used to be we focused more on one element or one tactic. It was PR, it was advertising, maybe it was a more direct marketing approach. Now we're looking at how do we leverage all of them and create sometimes what we call a spoke and hub, create a central place to drive consumers to get their information or to convince them to take an action. And that's an integrated program, and that can use multiple ways of touching a prospective client. Within that, you're correct, where we're seeing the majority of dollar increase in the spend is on the digital or the online component. And a lot of that has to do with, number one, perceptually it's easier to measure, and therefore a lot of executives within companies like that. They can see where their ROI is, and for them, since they can understand it better, they're more willing to put dollars towards it. Within that digital world, one of the key areas that we're seeing money being spent in an increase is in the search engine optimization, is where do you rank in Google and Yahoo, and how do we impact that? But I also do want to say that there is somewhat of a misnomer, because traditional approaches can now be married with new world approaches. So for example, we can create a traditional advertisement that drives someone to take an online action, or we can place an online ad that forces them through a portal to get to an activity, which is very measurable for us. So there are new ways with which we can measure some of the older or traditional approaches.
To what extent can you utilize the new social media, your Facebooks, your Twitters, and all that stuff to drive a public relations campaign that in the old days was kind of send out a press release and make some follow-up calls?
Yeah, I think some of those paradigms are perceptually changing to people who are not within the industry, but something I would like to point out is that it's the approach really hasn't changed. And one of the things that's interesting for somebody who's been in the industry for a while, like myself, to see is that we've moved into what now is perceived as the holy grail is third-party credibility. Used to be that first-party credibility was perhaps the most prevalent approach to marketing. Advertisements said, we are the best product or service, trust us on this. Now
so the third party, before I run out of
Sure.
time, is to get a trusted other brand to kind of endorse or lend their credibility to what you're doing.
So it could be media relations, PR, through media is being vetted. Another approach is Google and Yahoo are now seen as third-party endorsers that are validating the approach. They are not taking a position, but they're saying you're making the right choice by going here. Or first-person interaction where a trusted friend or advisor is saying this is the right choice for you. Third-party credibility is really becoming the holy grail, and certainly new media approaches allow us to do that fairly easily and a little bit more succinctly.
All right, David Warschawski of Warschawski, thanks so much for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
And now tonight's Made in Maryland, Yolanda Vasquez visits a Pikesville gift shop that offers a wide variety of items for every event on your summer list.